Hi, my name is Jeffrey Patron, and on today's episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about grain whiskey. But of course, guess what? Your boy's gonna be on a thing later. Watch until the end, and you'll hear me tell you what the thing is. I promise I'm not going to spend the rest of the episode singing. I'm trying to do this whole cold opener thing, and it's just, I don't think it's doing anything. We cut it. So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about grain whiskey. Now, of course, to talk about grain whiskey, I probably should set the standard of single grain Scotch whiskey. And of course, the way that single grain Scotch whiskey is made did really set the standard for me not being able to talk, but more importantly, for how grain whiskey is made. So, you might be wondering, what is grain whiskey, and what would single grain whiskey be? Single grain refers to one distillery, insofar as the single part. The grain does not actually mean only one grain, as opposed to single malt in Scotland, which refers to 100% malted barley. Horrible accent, I know, I apologize. But single grain can be a multitude of grains and will occasionally feature, and primarily will feature in many cases, malted barley in some capacity to just kick things off. What makes up the rest? Well, rye, wheat, and corn. Now, where exactly can you find those grains in whiskey, you might be wondering? Well, those are the grains most commonly associated with American whiskey, which is why bourbons and particularly corn whiskeys are most comparable to many kinds of grain whiskey. You have a percentage of corn, a good percentage of corn in some cases with these grain whiskeys, and the use of used barrels. What whiskey is that potentially ringing the bell of, sounding similar to? Mellow corn, of all things. Or even Michter's American, which is a bourbon mash that was aged in used barrels. Now, where these two styles differentiate, American whiskey, just made with these kinds of grains, and Scotch grain whiskey, or just the way the rest of the world perceives grain whiskey, is that grain whiskey is traditionally distilled to a higher point in which a lot of flavors begin to get removed. It becomes a very smooth, thin, flavorful product, not confrontational, but something that can be made quickly, fill up a blend, and you can just keep producing it en masse. So things like Johnny Walker Black, things like Jameson, to talk about Irish whiskey. All of these major blends of whiskey primarily will feature a good deal of grain whiskey to fill in the gap. There are some fantastic producers of single grain Scotch whiskey. Port Dundas was a primary producer of grain whiskey for a lot of these, things like Johnny Walker, that 69, Black and White, all these blends. But I believe in 2010, Diageo closed it, demolished it, and moved their grain whiskey interests to a distillery called Cameron Bridge. Also very good distillery. Girvan, I think, is another one. The point is, there's a lot of grain whiskey distilleries, but they mainly go underappreciated. Now, of course, Port Dundas, 12 and 18 are solid entries into that world. But if you really want to go into it, I don't quite know what this is, but if you want to do that, what you could do is find a single cask bottling network such as Scotch Malt Whiskey Society or like a single cask nation. And what you can do, because here's the secret, because no one really cares about single grain Scotch whiskey or even blended grain Scotch whiskey, you can buy, like totally, you can buy 30 to 40-year-old whiskey for fairly cheap. And is it going to be the same as, you know, most single malts you'd be familiar with, or even bourbons? No. Will it be a little thin, perhaps? Yes. Will it be a bargain? Will it be something that you can bring out and be like, here's a 30-year-old whiskey, and you're not going to have to worry about, I spent $9 million, you know, an over-exaggeration, of course, but you're not going to spend $1,000 for a 30-year-old whiskey. You can get a decent age statement and be like, pa-boom, got it. But I am clearly overexcited, and I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control, and I think I like it. Get it? Get it? Do you get it? Alrighty, well, of course, Ireland uses grain whiskey. India, as far as I can tell, I believe they do use grain whiskey, but it is more a reliance for things like Officer's Choice Blue Label of neutral grain spirits, which is a weird entry into this world. Similar, I guess, if you run your grain whiskey too high, it could become a neutral grain spirit. But a country that really embraced grain whiskey outside of Ireland, which, if you've seen my Ireland episode, the Elusive Irish Whiskey episode, you would know, and even if you haven't and you just know whiskey, you might know that Ireland was offered, or at least distilleries in Ireland were offered Anais coffees, coffee still, a early version of the column still, before Scotland, and they turned it down. And it took almost 100 years for them to adapt using column stills. However, since then, it's become such a predominant place on the market that Irish whiskey wouldn't be the way that it is now, especially with companies like Jameson, with their flagship product being a blend so made up of grain whiskey that it just wouldn't be the same. And of course, we don't have that much time, but I do want to highlight the two main grain whiskeys that I'm a big fan of, which would, of course, be the Cheetah from Suntory and Nikka Coffee Grain by Nikka. Now, both of these were aged in used barrels and have developed a creamy flavor. They are very sweet, easy to drink, vanilla rich, just the best. Not overly complex. There is some level of brittleness to them, of metallicness to them, of that classic thinness from them, but they are approximating such interesting styles. Nikka Coffee Grain takes that creaminess to just such another level. It is just so much vanilla ice cream. It almost smells like a dish that one of my favorite restaurants makes, a apple empanada. Just the freshly cooked, or the warm dough, just the caramely apples, the cinnamon, the cream, and of course, vanilla ice cream. This is just really some quality stuff. Now, most comparable, at least for me, is a thing called Michter's American. At least, most comparable to me to the Nika coffee grain is Michter's American. Now, there definitely is a thinness to this. It does have this brittle, metallic-y, almost felt marker kind of end to this whiskey, but it's just this interesting experience. And if you're interested in interesting experiences, get into some grain whiskey, give it a try. Check out some of the Irish grain whiskeys not featured in this video, which will theoretically get their own episodes. Things like Kilbeggan have some amazing grain whiskeys. Teeling has probably one of the best grain whiskeys in Ireland you can buy, and of course, a world of single cask bottlings of really old grain whiskeys from Scotland. So, find one you like. If you already have some that you like, comment below, and of course, guess what? I am a happy boy. Why exactly am I happy? Well, as you might have heard at the top of the episode, I am going to be later tonight at some point, I don't know the time right now, appearing with Jake of Hannah and Jake on his Twitch channel, Actual Jake, twitch.tv/actualjake, and we're going to be going through the whiskeys that I went over in the last episode tonight. So, yeah. Hi. Subscribe, maybe, if you want to.